against WeiFu, but he is going in an underdog here against the very aggressive lineup from WeiFu.
Yeah, you don't suddenly just lose it. You get a little bit out of touch with meta maybe or something like that. But Thijs was European champion twice because he was really, really good at Hearthstone at his peak. And that doesn't just vanish. That's just a case of working your way back up there in terms of in-meta practice.
Exactly. And, I mean, hey, in terms of in-meta practice, he's probably the best out of any player here. He's played basically 10 hours a day, every day since Kobolds and Catacombs came out. So showing that he has not only got the raw ability, but also the knowledge of the metagame to back things up. And he would have to have a pretty good knowledge to bring this slightly off-meta lineup, clearly showing he thinks this has got what it takes to target exactly what his opponents will be bringing. And we did see that the Master Oakheart Dragon Hatcher deck was working pretty well for him in Seat Story, but here, against this Paladin in particular, it looks like it's going to have its work very much cut out for it.
Yeah, he's got a nice looking start here, WeiFu, as well. Can definitely just get all this stuff down then when it gets wiped out. If it gets wiped out, looking at this hand from Thijs, Corridor Creeper is creeping about like it does, ready to get cheaper.
It is indeed. And for WeiFu, I mean, these few turns, playing it optimally is kind of difficult, actually, it seems, because going Coin Knife Juggler here is obviously a pretty nice way to get in a good amount of damage right out of the gate, especially in addition to Deckhand coming down on the following turn. But I like saving the coin here to go for Juggler into Coin Call to Arms on the following turn, or maybe not even that, just Juggler into Squire Hero Power, petering out your damage a little bit slower so that you're not quite so vulnerable to Wild Pyromancer or Spirit Lash in the early turns.
Yeah, and that seems to be what he's going to go for. He's seems to be saving the coin for a purpose. That seems to be the best purpose. And Thijs, all he's got really going for him here is this Harrison. Got a little bit of early defense. He should get to the Harrison. And then if that gets to take down a weapon, who knows, maybe he gets to hang in there. But for now, he's got a few problems to deal with.
He does indeed. Can take out the Radiant Elemental fairly effectively, which is one of the benefits of going for the Deckhand on turn 1 over the Squire, which again was something very much to be debated because there was the benefit of saving it to go in combination with the Juggler for 2 juggles. So many things could have been done differently already at this point in the game. But it looks like for WeiFu now, while he does still have the ability, as I was saying, to go Argent Squire Hero Power, we're probably gearing up for a Call to Arms.
This Maul is insane as well because of that. Divine Shield is one of the best things you can get against this priest deck in the early game at least. Before Psychic Scream starts to say, I ignore your Divine Shield, mate, and just put the stuff back in the deck.
Absolutely, and it will probably be coming pretty powerfully into effect here. The Master Spell can obviously take out a lot of take out the Divine Shields on all these minions, but it's not mitigating enough of the damage, I believe. But Kazakus is probably an even better option to go for on this turn.
1 or 5?
Like, probably for 1, I would say. You can go for Wild Pyro with a 1 mana and a Mind Blast for a nice big sweep in terms of damage. But at the same time, actually, if you go for 5, maybe that gives you 2 effective board clears, because you can go for the Wild Pyro with a couple of spells, and then follow up with 4 damage AoE on the 5 mana. So there's real benefits to either play.
He's going to go for the 1, and that is going to be rewarded most likely, because he's going to have the option to take down these Divine Shields that are going to appear next turn.
Very good point.
With that Pyro. So that is going to be a big reward. I'm assuming he took 2 damage to everything there, although from where he sat, it's not as clear as from where we're sat. He doesn't know what the Maul's going to have. He doesn't know it's in hand. So
yeah.
Bit harder from where he is positioned.
3 damage does actually look surprisingly good in this instance compared to what you'd usually expect, because he has the Wild Pyro. But all things considered, he will probably have gone for the 2 damage anyway, because this way he can get the board sweep and save back the Wild Pyromancer potentially for yet another clear on whatever small minions come down later from WeiFu.
WeiFu has an apparently great looking play here with just the bump with the Righteous Protector, play the Argent Squire, Maul, clear, face.
Argent, you play the Creeper, wouldn't you then, in that instance, if you were going to clear stuff off?
If you're going to clear stuff off, you can play with the Creeper, yeah.
Yeah, and then if you go Creeper, you can put Divine Shield on it, which is such a nice way to protect against the vast majority of stuff that Thijs can go for on the next couple of turns, and this is where Divine Shield becomes truly disgusting, as you were saying.
That's a lot of damage if Thijs doesn't deal with it. Depends exactly what this potion was. As always, we didn't get quite a good look at what was actually chosen. It's going to be crucial.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to see something like Master Spell, Potion, if it was damage to everything, could be pretty strong. Maybe Wild Pyro, Mind Blast into Kazakus Potion, things like that to take out the Divine Shield beforehand. It's this kind of play that WeiFu has put Thijs in the position where he has to be doing it.
Oh, he's had to Master Spell. Which is going to be 2 damage to all, and yeah, Summon.
And this isn't bad at all for Thijs. He's got decent counterplay here, but that Blessing of Kings is one of the best cards that Weifu could possibly get in this instance. He has right now, 11, 13 damage he could be pushing here, but probably even more likely to see the Kings in combination with the Squire to deliver very likely lethal on the next turn.
Yeah, what about what Weifu wants to do with this weapon here? Does he want to take down the minion? Because you can hit for 9 and then just get out of range of everything other than what? Death?
Well, the main thing to be looking at, I think, is Dragonfire Potion in this instance, because if you go Squire, buff the Creeper with the Kings, and attack face with everything, you bring your opponent down to 9 plus that. You would bring them down to 5 health, I believe, with that line of play, or would it be 7?
However, if you do it this way, then
5
if
health.
you take down the 2/2, you protect against the Dragonfire Potion by having too much health.
Yeah, exactly. And Leroy Jenkins will close out the game next turn if Dragonfire comes down. So having done the math, I think this is absolutely the correct play. Death doesn't save him, and Dragonfire Potion doesn't save him. I don't think there's really anything that Thijs can do in this instance. It was just too strong of an opener from Weifu.
Harrison didn't do much.
It didn't. Harrison has actually been really weak this whole
museum
tournament.
was just closed.
Yeah.
It's not going in there at all.
We've seen it in so many of the decks. I believe Thijs has it in this deck instead of Gadgetzan and instead of Lyra as well. So clearly relying on that for the mid to late game draw effect up against maybe Skull of the Minari is the main reason you're looking at it.
Sure. I haven't seen a Harrison or an Ooze connect at all yet. There's quite a few out there in this tournament.
Harrison
Not
has
a huge number, but there's a few.
Harrison has done absolutely awfully. It's a nod to the fact that people were expecting a much more controlly meta game than has in fact materialized in this tournament.
Yeah, and it just turns out that when you can ban one of the decks, mainly being Warlock, you can play the aggro. If the priest gets through, so be it. And then your aggro decks are just good against everything else.
So
It's really interesting. It wasn't obvious that's how it would work out.
Yep, it's very, very true. But for Weifu here, he is able to deliver that swift lethal that he really wanted against this priest, because getting in victories against the priest is a really nice way. It means that Thijs will very likely have to line up his big druid against some of the other aggressive decks from Weifu, which is awful.
Yeah, we've seen how that ends, unless you're Pavel, who seems to find ways to do things mere mortals cannot.
Yes.
The druid just dies horribly most of the time.
It's true. There is, I believe, the double spreading plague in the big druid, which will have a decent job at clearing up against the aggressive decks. But now the paladin's out of the way, that's kind of the deck that is best against. So even then, the druid is still, I think, going to be struggling big time.
Yeah, so where does it go from here? Well, Weifu 1 up and a chance of a third consecutive Taiwan victory.
Could be indeed.
Go with the left-hand side of the draw, which is all losses.
Yeah.
Maybe the virtual is becoming a reality after that last match.
Could very well be. And for Weifu now, with his remaining decks, he could be going for maybe looking to line up the aggro druid, just going with more of his aggressive decks one after the other. It doesn't really matter because
they're all the same,
exactly.
Right?
Even if you ignore the fact that Conquest Pick Order doesn't really matter, they're all very, very similar decks. They're Corridor Creeper decks that will be trying to get stuff on the board early on, follow up with Creeper, and then deliver surprise burst lethal somehow.
Yeah, and it looks like that's going to just go through this lineup of ties with Big Druid being so slow. Even Rogue can be slow if you get wide against it. This aggro druid can just play a living mana and it's just game over a lot of the time.
Yeah, just looking at that now, I think that that particular aggro deck from Weifu was actually banned in the end from Thijs. So that's kind of the one he's most afraid of, I suppose. But I suppose for Thijs, this is the best matchup he can hope to get in this particular series. Because Big Druid against Kazakus Priest has always had a pretty good time. I mean, it is Kazakus Priest. You can only have so good of a time, but relatively so.
Yeah, the party that is Anduin never stops. Never stops giving.
Yeah.
But yeah, Thijs should have a very good chance here. This deck's evolved so much. It was a good matchup before. It's still a good matchup now.
It is when you manage to draw some early ramp, which with a lot of these Druid decks, be it Quest or Big or Jade actually, we've seen a very good amount of ramp for all of those decks. But unfortunately for Thijs, even though he runs pretty much the full suite of ramp cards in Double Growth, Blossom, Maya Keeper and Nourish, he hasn't really hit that early ramp whatsoever.
He's managed to find pretty much nothing here. Obviously the Maya Keeper is ramp. There's some Jade Blossom. It just changes so quickly, right? Yeah, suddenly goes from pretty terrible to acceptable. Of course, the Priest cannot put on enough early pressure.
His hand is actually looking decent now for Thijs, unless WeiFu can find some ways to clear off these big minions from Thijs with perhaps an Anduin, or ramp up himself exactly with the Nourish. It's looking like Thijs will very possibly find himself maybe a Master Oakheart, maybe just a Deathwing Dragonlord, and apply so much pressure that there just won't really be the ability for WeiFu to come back.
Yeah, I think this Nourish is going to play a big part in him having a chance, though.
Do you think that does go for ramp, or does it go for draw?
I think it might go for ramp. There's plenty of draw in hand with the Novice with the Northshine now. Obviously, Northshine is not that much now, but it can find it. I think he might ramp up, and then he can do everything that he draws, empty his hand. Empty his hand, get it down to 8 cards. It's usually emptying your hand as Priest.
Card draw is really good as Priest, though.
It really
is. As Priest, you really want to find the Anduin as quickly as you possibly can.
Yep.
I think it's... I can see your reasoning. I can definitely see your reasoning. If he had a Circle of Healing, that might potentially change his thinking, because then he can go for Nourish for ramp and then go for Northstride Cleric, hopefully draw 3-4 cards all in one fell swoop.
That's the sort of play I had in mind. Except he hasn't got the Circle at the time, but looking at the hand, looking at the card draw available... Well, again, if he chooses to draw cards and get to his combo, it's probably quick enough if he hits it, so that would actually also be decent. Yeah,
it's decent, but I think I preferred the Circle of Healing there. I mean,
I did, yeah.
The Shadow Word Pain doesn't really do all too much in this instance, or even, the Spirit Lash. Also, if you draw Acolyte, you can use it in combination with the Cleric to get your draw going, and I think that's what WeiFu needs to do. He's got a good amount of draw in hand, but that will eventually just run out.
Yeah, he hasn't got that minion-based hand that you can sometimes get and just go at it with Priest. It's very rare. He hasn't got it, so the alternative is drawing cards. The only reason I'm saying that maybe I wouldn't draw with this Nourish, is because, and it's got better now with the Acolyte, is there's enough draw that maybe you can start drawing faster by actually having the mana than by having the Nourish.
Yeah.
But if he just goes for the draw with the Nourish, I understand that entirely. I'm not going to complain about it if he goes that route.
I mean, it's the exact same thinking as Druid with Ultimate Infestation, basically. You're realising that Nourish for ramp will eventually draw you more cards anyway, and it will also have gained you a whole bunch of mana.
Except that was a bit more obvious. This one I'm certainly not nailing my colours to. That's the way I would go with it, though.
Okay.
And trust that my mana would keep me alive longer and get me more cards over the course of the game.
I can definitely respect the thinking, but maybe WeiFu here is looking to go for Nourish for draw and just throw down the Cleric is looking to be what he's going for. As, it was worth considering going for something else, but now that he's gone for this much draw, it's kind of too much, actually, because he could go off massively with Acolyte, Wild Pyromancer, Novice Engineer, draw so many cards here.
It's going to be good. I mean, he's going to get through this deck fast. He's down to 17 cards already, so he's nearly halfway.
Yeah.
It's only turn 5, and he's just going to rattle through this deck and get towards that combo.
That's right.
But he's up against a deck that is going to do him really soon if he's not careful.
That's right. And we have been, as you said, focusing on WeiFu a bit too much over the past couple of turns, but that's because he's had the interesting things going on. Thijs has just been ramping up, trying to get to Coon the Forgotten King into Ultimate Infestation, maybe with one of the dragons first, because it's a little bit more tempo onto the board, unless there is a really juicy 5 health target like a Raza were to come down now. Obviously we can see it's not quite there yet for WeiFu, but for Thijs it's looking, his game plan is still, plan A is going great. He's ramped up, he's going to play big stuff now, but for WeiFu he needs to be making sure he's keeping up with the draw, as he probably goes for a 1-mana spell.
He's going to go for for the 5. He's just going full on drawing cards by the look of it, but to draw cards he's got to make space to draw them.
Yeah.
He really needs to empty this hand out, weirdly enough. And before this turn his whole hand cost 25 mana.
Wow, that's not very much for a 10
card.
cards. Yeah.
When one of them costs 7 and doesn't do anything.
Interestingly as well, though, for WeiFu, like if he goes for 1 mana, that almost ends up drawing him more cards anyway, because he can just do it with Acolyte, Pyro, 1-mana spell, and all of a sudden you're cycling through your deck. 5-mana potion feels a little bit heavy here to me, to be honest. He needs to be a bit more loosey-goosey with his play, I think.
He does, I think. I think he needs to go at it. There's 2 more cards, but the cards aren't the problem. It's the making space for the cards.
I suppose the Polymorph is one of the main reasons to go for 5, however, because that's simply not available on 1 mana. And if you can manage to hit a Deathwing Dragonlord, maybe a Ysera that there's not really another answer for, that can be the way that you come back in this matchup once the big things start to come down.
Could have taken a 10 and just saved it forever and gone for Super Polymorph.
That's true. That's worth considering. I think Thijs is the player who's good enough with this deck to play around that enough. He has said multiple times how much he absolutely adores this deck, so he will start to smell a rat potentially when a potion is picked and isn't played for like 4 turns.
Which is a situation he might find himself in, so we're probably going to get to test that theory. If Thijs doesn't go all in, that will be why. WeiFu now, on the back foot and hasn't drawn the cards he's been capable of drawing. And now his ability to draw cards is going to be slowed down because he's going to have to actually start responding to the board.
Yeah, he is indeed. He's got the ability to do so right now, however, for a good couple of turns. The Shadow Word Death is a really nice way to make sure he's keeping up, and if things really get out of hand, you just scream for help. That's what my mum always told me.
Yeah, just scream for help.
Just scream for help. Obviously in reference to stranger danger, but also just, if you're struggling with an exam.
What about a cast? Help!
A cast, just really at the top of your lungs. Just really let rip.
Maybe sometime. Maybe next year. It's only 4 days away or something. Okay, so talking of screaming for help, he is screaming for help.
Yeah, going for the shuffle here. He shuffled some cards you don't really want to be shuffling into your opponent's hand. It's not bad, actually. Getting a Jade in there is really nice. Kazakus is obviously not too good. But Thijs will be really happy to draw Kuhn again at any point, because that's probably the best card in his deck at this point, because it's just a way to dump your hand while also getting a huge amount of stats on the board.
Well, Weifu's got that option that we keep talking about to sort of empty his hand.
Mm-hmm.
Thijs is just trying to work out which is the best, really good card to play at the moment.
Right.
But Weifu's going to have to try and rifle through this deck, and he's got the ability to do it. You can see for yourselves how much card draw he has got there.
He has got a lot.
Like, this Novice Engineer has just been sat there chilling the whole game in hand. I feel like that should have found its way onto the board at some point somehow.
And it's interesting how it's kind of switched now, because beforehand Thijs was just doing his game plan. He was ramping up, doing the boring bit, and Weifu had the interesting bit. But now in this instance, he's just got a handful of card draw. So over the next couple of turns, he's just going to draw cards. That's kind of what he's going to do. And for Thijs, it was the really interesting turn, because Lich King, great, you can get it down early, gain a bunch of armor with Earthen Scales as well. But it's vulnerable to death. It's vulnerable to Anduin on curve as well, which is why, I was looking at Ysera maybe a bit more favourably there, because it's not much pressure. But if you can get yourself a couple of Emerald Drakes, maybe some Ysera Awakens, you can actually push a very respectable amount of damage.
Maybe that's why he's gone for Lich King first, though, because he's now testing the Priest for have you got some damage. And if the Priest hasn't got the death and has to go with damage to kill this, then the Ysera can just sit there and get as many +5 things as you want and just take over the game.
That's fair. What damage things are going to be killing this off, though?
I mean, obviously, death is going to be what kills it off. That's not what I was talking about. Dragonfire doesn't hurt Ysera anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
So, yeah, maybe Ysera would have stuck around longer than I thought.
It looks bad here because obviously we can see the Shadow Word Death, but for Thijs, I think he was just thinking there's a good chance that Shadow Word Death isn't there, so there's no point playing around it too heavily.
However, there is draw 2 cards, polymorph a minion, and that would have killed the Ysera. And we were talking earlier about Thijs playing around potions long term. Turns out he did.
Yep, there does come the potion now, and that's actually a good point you raised earlier, that he could have gone for 10 mana, because Thijs will probably have been afraid of that. You never expect a 10 mana potion.
Nobody expects a Spanish 10 mana potion.
Exactly. It's easily I do get the reference, by the way. Good. Don't give me that look. It's easily the least picked potion the majority of the time, but for the mass polymorph effect, it can be worth it some of the time. So Weifu could have considered holding it back a little bit more effectively there in order to get the surprise effect. But finding Anduin as quickly as you can is more important than anything.
And he's going to find it soon.
Yeah.
But Thijs is going to kill him soon. So it's going to be kind of close.
Damn.
It's a bit of a race, as we knew that at the start. It's who combos first, and it's usually the Druid. Obviously, it's not actually a combo deck in this instance, but it's the same deal. You combo by having mana and expensive cards. That's a killer combo. Yeah,
but for Thijs here, I mean, it's not looking great no matter what he does. Ysera burns a card from his hand on the next turn, which isn't devastating because he's got a lot of the good stuff in hand. So he's probably looking to go for Sleepy Dragon instead, just because all of a sudden you're not burning cards in your hand. But the amount of pressure that's being pushed forward here for 9 mana is so much lower than it should be for Thijs at this point.
I hope Weifu's actually remembered to put in the combo in this deck. It's going to happen one day.
Raza and Anduin. Let's take a quick look at his deck, as we can see Anduin. Oh, and there's Raza.
Phew. Whew. That would be a really bad deck. Just a deck that draws all your cards and then you lose in fatigue.
Yeah.
Without anything to actually do.
What if you put 2 Loot Hoarders in your deck and then didn't activate your Raza?
You could put 2 Loot Hoarders in your deck. That'd be a fantastic way to play. If anyone didn't see earlier, that's a thing that happened to somebody. They didn't put 2 in their deck, but somebody else put 2 in there for him, and he completely forgot.
Yeah, that was absolutely spectacular to watch.
That was the end of that. And of course, Pavel was the opponent and waved him goodbye. Just because, why not?
And now for Weifu, he's going to be realising, I think, at this point, that this is his window. He's still got the Shadow Word Death. He's still got time he needs to draw into his Raza and Anduin, because fairly soon cards like Kuhn are going to come back into the hand. Cards like Deathwing Dragonlord, Master Oakheart. It's going to be ridiculous the amount of damage that's being pushed forward. So he needs to make sure he's not dying at these points and drawing as much as he can. But still, he doesn't go for Acolyte on this turn, which I find interesting, to be honest.
I wasn't keen on it to start with, and that's the caster use of the word interesting there, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
But I think actually he needed to do this to empty his hand so he can draw the cards next turn. These minions are just cluttering up his hand, so his thought process is, let's get this out of my hand, then next turn I'm going to draw a load of cards, and I've got time to do that.
It's true, but I think he would really have liked to have had the mana to play Anduin on the next turn had he drawn it. He could still have dumped a couple of cards from his hand by maybe, I don't know, just going for the silence, just playing the Binding Heel, getting cards out of his hand in order to make room for Anduin. But he does find it this turn anyway. However, the Battle Cry doesn't kill anything, which is actually kind of important in this matchup.
I wonder if he's tempted... Oh. Yeah.
Do you think he just goes for it anyway?
Just draw some cards! Just please. No, he could go for it anyway. That's one way of doing it. Or he could just draw the cards. Those two things. I think he's worrying too much about the board. Throughout the whole game, he's looked a little bit like when he took that Shadow Word Pain to kill a 3/3. It's like he's worried too much about the board and not enough about winning the game.
Right. I think I can agree with that. It's one of those instances where this game would be so much easier if you got every card you wanted exactly when you wanted it, because Raza already being down would make this a lot easier.
Yeah, it really would.
Yeah.
So yeah, this wasn't about him worrying about the board too much. He's going to... I nearly said I wonder if he's going to, then just change my mind, but he's worrying about 1/5s.
It's kind of worrying about 1/5s. I think it's more dumping cards from his hand.
Right.
But I haven't liked the way these last couple of turns have been played from WeiFu. Getting the Acolyte on the same turn as the Spirit Lash last turn felt a bit more effective to make sure you're maximizing your draw. Whereas with this turn, yeah, maybe he can get the Shadow Reaper to hit one of the minions. But to be honest, if there were any minions that could have been hit by Shadow Reaper, they probably would have come down already, because Thijs was clearly not happy to play this Sleepy Dragon. He'd much rather have thrown down Deathwing Dragonlord or Master Oakheart, something like that instead.
And Thijs is finally hitting the attack button because he needs to. He knows how small the deck is for WeiFu, so he's got to start attacking because the combo must be near.
Yeah. And these 4/12s are going to be plaguing WeiFu pretty effectively, I would say. That's
4/12 dragons.
Yes, that's true.
Just in case it wasn't tricky enough to deal with.
A priest's true worst nightmare.
Yeah, it's almost like these were made deliberately.
Surely not.
Surely not. Surely it's just coincidence.
And for WeiFu now, if he just goes for Shadow Reaper on this turn, he's kind of just in the same spot, to be honest. Obviously, he'd given himself a chance to draw Raza with the extra card draw he got at the start of his turn, and with the Acolyte he played in by not going for Shadow Reaper on the previous turn. But if he had just played Shadow Reaper last turn, if he'd drawn Anduin now, it would have been so... Or Shadow Reaper last turn, if he'd drawn Raza this turn, it would have been so much more effective.
Yeah, he's having a truly difficult time of this one.
I think this is a matchup that I would have to play more to definitively decide if it's worth going for the Anduin before you're hitting any of the Battle Cry minions. But I just have a suspicion that it is, because I don't think it's really going to improve that much more, even if you manage to hit one of the big attack minions with Anduin.
He has another issue that we haven't commented on as well, is that Thijs is up to 39.
Oof.
So 28 is easy, 32 can happen, 36 is a thing that does occur.
Yeah.
39 actually means you can't do it in one turn.
39 is when you're in the instances of like Radiant with a 1-mana Kazakus potion for damage, stuff like that, where with the 2/0 mana spells.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it's not happening in this game.
Exactly. This is not happening right now.
Which basically is the effective, same thing as Thijs almost having up an ice block. So he's going to get a 2-turn window where he can demolish at some point.
Yeah.
Because if any of this damage turns to the minions, not to the face, that's just buying Thijs even more time. And so Thijs is just starting to accumulate this repeated 8 damage. And you can always add one more turn's worth of damage on there, so he's in a great spot.
He is indeed. There's positives and negatives for everything that's going on from though. Obviously, he's afraid now that Anduin has been played for just damage, either clearing his board or just killing him. But at the same time, he's got Master Oakheart in hand, and neither Drakari Enchanter or Dragon Hatcher have been drawn, which I should mention are the 1-attack and 2-attack minions that Oakheart will be summoning, which means the Enchanter will come out and give 2 activations to the Dragon Hatcher. So Oakheart will be pulling 2 dragons from the deck, which I believe is, Deathwing Dragonlord at this point, and Primordial Drake, something like that.
Raza has entered the building.
Wow.
But he's awfully late.
And that's 10 burst damage available to Thijs on the following turn, which...
It's a nightmare.
Nice. I think WeiFu's just dead here. Like, what can he do? I guess he can heal up with Priest of the Feast is his best option. Maybe in combination with Raza. He can go for Raza, Hero Power, Priest, Binding Heal, and Silence, obviously, with Hero Powers thrown in the middle as well. But even then, if he's firing off at minions, he's not killing his opponent, which he really needs to do.
Already on a high number. I mean, he's got 4 cards left in the deck. He's got to somehow muster up 40 damage with those, plus the 2 at the start of each turn. Yeah. So, even if he's not killing minions, he's in trouble, and he is going to point it all at face.
I think I like this from WeiFu, going for the heal, but also the damage to his opponent's face. He realizes, yeah, I'm going to be taking a very respectable amount of damage on the following turn, but I'm unlikely to die. It would have to be an exact combination of cards of like double Nightmare and then Death Coil from the Lich King, something like that. But he's also giving himself a tremendous amount of burst damage, so that if he does draw Velen on the next turn, which is a 1 in 4 chance, he can push forward 28, 32 damage, I believe.
He's got probably more because he's got Silence as well. Yeah, 32, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I figured it out.
You said 32, right?
I did say 32.
It's close to what I was thinking. I was thinking 32.
Very close, actually.
So Thijs has now got to look for a way to win very quickly. He knows that 32 is available. We've seen the healing. Did we see the Circle of Healing?
Oh, actually, can he win with Ultimate Infestation? Sorry, I only just looked at that line of play because you never really look at Infestation to close out the game, but I believe that would be 1 off. If he goes for
8, 19, 24, 1
damage off lethal with
playing,
the Ultimate Infestation.
He's not playing any Innovate nonsense.
No, there's no Innovates in the deck.
You can't draw into Scales and win that way. Which would be entertaining.
That would be grand to watch indeed. And it looks like he's going for some kind of play like this. The Nightmares will still be... the minions will still be intact until the following turn. He's going for this line of play anyway, which means he's going to burn a lot of cards from his deck, but he's not pushing for the lethal option. So I guess he just didn't have anything more impactful actually to go for on the previous turn.
You saw him wince there. He wanted that Malfurion.
Yeah.
But not getting that.
And now for WeiFu, there's going to be 9 damage left on the board if he just purely goes face, which means the damage he's actually afraid of now that he's seen 2 Nightmares is kind of low. He knows that no Ysera card was generated at the end of Thijs' turn. So maybe he's in a position, now that he's seen Malfurion burned, where he will just start pushing for damage to face, because although he is making a very risky line of play with that approach, it might be worth it.
We're ignoring this Kazakus, though, that Thijs has got.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
They might actually just
maybe it will
damage.
Activate. Yeah, maybe
it should activate. Like, he's been unlucky if there's 2 of something left in his deck, 6 cards. Well, it'd be 5. So he should be able to get a potion to help him out as well.
This is really nice from WeiFu. He's pushing a good amount of damage, making sure he draws through his entire deck, basically, at this point. If he goes for the Power Word Shield on this turn, he will have drawn every single card on his deck, and maybe even Fatigue for 1 by the start of his next turn. Wait, he's going for the Holy Smite now instead of with the Velen. Surely you just go for Power Word Shield. Okay. Well, clearly he's thinking he'll have the damage to close out anyway. This is now 24 damage he has available, 28 with the Silence on the following turn. So still 1 damage off lethal available for WeiFu, which makes me wonder why he didn't go for Power Word Shield on the last turn. The Circle wasn't taken off Silence.
It down from the thing earlier.
That's true.
That's another 4 if he finds a Circle.
It very well could be, and maybe he's figured that out, actually. That would explain his line of play of going for the Holy Smite instead of the Power Word Shield.
I think Armor's entertaining here.
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to be looking at that line of approach. He knows that every card will have been drawn.
And Thijs will have the option as well to maybe put WeiFu so low that WeiFu has to hurt himself with Fatigue to win. Leaving up this auctioneer, but he can get traded into now, so he can get rid of it.
No, yeah, I think he realises that the extra 4 damage is just too scary. It's a cool line of thinking. But with this, Radiant Elemental is the final card, which I think means that 36 damage is going to be 24, 28, another 4, 32. I don't think it's actually quite there yet.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards can be played.
Because it's obviously 20 with the Mind Blast, 24 with the Power Word Shield, 28 with the Silence, and then 32 with the Radiant Elemental, which means it's just not quite there.
I mean, you've just got to do it anyway, right? because no matter how many times you count it, there's no other play.
Well, I mean, he's looking at other players because maybe there's some way he can prevent lethal in some world. Obviously, there was another Ysera card generated.
He gets no more cards, so if he can't win now, he basically can't win ever, unless this Holy Fire is a thing.
Well, no, he can go like Ping Face, Shadow Word Pain, Ping Face, Holy Fire, Ping Face. You know, he can clear up enough of the board so that he maybe doesn't die here.
The shadows grow short.
I think that's the play, because he can heal himself out of range of damage.
Yeah, so the Holy Fire making the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is what he's going for. He can bring his opponent down to 30 health, back up to 31. So this will be lethal on the following turn. So it's going to have to be the second Earthen Scales if it wasn't burnt off of the Ultimate Infestation, which I don't believe that it was. But Thijs has put himself in this situation by going for the UI. He has meant that he's burnt so many cards. He burnt the Malfurion, which would have probably locked him out into a victory at this point.
But then he would maybe not have got there because he was 5 cards less deep in his deck.
Right.
So, but he definitely knew that was terrible for him when it happened. He rolled his eyes as soon as the Malfurion went.
So I think Thijs is going to be cycling as aggressively as he can here. He's looking at, is it best to dump cards from my hand and then go for Nourish, or to just draw with the 1 from Wrath here? He's only got 4 cards left in his deck, and he needs to find that...
2 of them are Earthen Scales.
He's already played 1 Earthen Scales earlier on the Lich King. He finds the Wild Growth to keep going for it. He knows that this is his out, because he will have figured out, if he's keeping track of cards, there is lethal available on him on the next turn. Drakari Enchanter doesn't do it. I think that's over, and WeiFu's going to take game 2.
I'm not calling it just until I work out what actually happens with this card draw, but yeah. And now he's hoping that his opponent hasn't got the cards he thinks he's got.
31 life. I'm pretty sure that's just 32 damage. Yeah. This is going to be WeiFu taking game number 2. Somehow, this was looking so good for Thijs.
Feels like Thijs shouldn't be dying here with a handful of cards, UIing himself to death.
This felt like a game that should have been maybe, I don't know, Oakheart earlier on, maybe Deathwing earlier on. The draws weren't quite in his order because he was left with turns where there wasn't much to do. But going for double Nightmare when he was 1 off lethal and not even pushing for damage felt kind of like a mixed game plan, because he was destroying some of his most powerful minions, whereas just attacking face repetitively with those 4 damage minions, would probably have just carried him to a victory.
Yeah, I also feel that Thijs could have abused the death at the end, the fatigue at the end somehow as well during this.
I was kind of looking at if he could make sure there's no minions on board in order to hit with the silence, so that he would have to silence his own Velen, but because of the Radiant Elemental, even that possibility wasn't there.
Yeah, there's usually some, that's why I was looking at the Auctioneer thing as well earlier. There's usually some trickery you can do that hurts the Priest if they get that deep in.
Yeah.
I've seen some classic games recently where Priest versus Priest mirrors are won by one of the players just fatiguing the other by making them have to do weird stuff. But yeah, 2-0 to WeiFu. We're looking at a 3rd Taiwan victory in a row potentially here, after saying earlier on they were struggling. That would be absolutely incredible to see. We saw from Thijs play that we might not necessarily agree with there, but we also saw play that we might not agree with from WeiFu. Yeah, he chose not to draw his cards early.
Exactly. A lot of turns where he was going very light on the card draw, which I wouldn't have done myself. He was very close to overdrawing throughout the whole game, but I think he could have dumped his hand more effectively and then refilled with the good cards like Velen, Raza, and Anduin, whereas he chose instead to take it a little bit slower.
Still drew them all.
He still drew them all, but that is because Thijs didn't find the real beaters to start killing him nice and quickly. But now he just has to get a win with this tempo rogue. But to do so, he hasn't got the best starting hand at all.
So, rogue, it's just another beating stick. You're talking about the beaters who's got cold blood in it as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting inclusion. It's definitely still floating around there. I know Ball Control, one of the most proficient rogue players at the moment, is going backwards and forwards. Probably not quite there on the Cold Blood because it's just another spell and there's so many other good minions you want to be playing instead. But for WeiFu here, this is not what you want to be getting. Corridor Creeper can be fantastic in your starting hand. It usually is. But against a Priest, when you have no 1-drops, it gets cheap really slowly.
Yeah, and Thijs this time with a hand. He's going to be able to draw cards and play Razas. That's a hand.
Yeah, I would take that hand. This looks like a very respectable anti-rogue hand, I would say.
playing a 3-3 without having any activation.
Yeah, I like this line of play. Backstab and Hero Power could have come in, but Backstab will be really nice later on down the line. If you can activate for a bigger Edwin, activate a Vilespine, activate an Elven Minstrel, a lot of good cards you want to be hitting over just killing off the Acolyte of Pain.
So Thijs choosing to Pain there. Had the option to play the Tar Creep, which gets worse over time.
I think I like going for the Pain there. There was, just the fact that you can kill it off and give yourself a higher chance of drawing with the Acolyte on the following turn. The punishes that come down for Rogue for not killing off that SI are fairly low, but at the same time, just getting it out of the way feels pretty good to me.
Yeah. Talking of fairly low punishes, I'm just looking at this hand. He hasn't got anything to punish anything with.
Can't make the corridor.
Thijs could have done what he liked.
Yeah. There's nothing that can be done here for WeiFu. And this is exactly what Thijs was looking for. At the same time, he's obviously happy at the moment, but alarm bells are going to start to be going off for Thijs, because when your opponent plays basically nothing for the first 4 turns of the game, only a unactivated SI7 agent, there's the kind of actually really scary cards against priests like Cobalt Scalevane, Bone Mare. Cairn isn't really in there anymore. So the
cards are in his hand then?
Exactly, the exact cards that are in hand.
Basically.
Which will be very scary for Thijs indeed. He does have decent answers to follow up though. Even just Raz the Chained on curve here is good enough in terms of stats to fight back, as WeiFu draws yet another pretty much useless card.
So does Thijs want to... No, he just wants to play Shadow Word Death, I think. I don't even care what I was going to say anymore. Just Novice Engineer Shadow Word Death seems good to me.
I don't know if I agree. I think
go with the Chert Vaza.
Yeah, I think I like this line of play because you have the Orkanai already on board. 0 mana, 2 damage. Having your own backstab to be able to fight back.
This challenges the next minion he plays as well. You're expecting Corridor Creeper or a second Kobold or something. Yeah,
Shadow Word Death is going to be good in this game
slow,
no matter what. This is because you know that your opponent has something deathable in hand, given how slow that they've played. Unless it was actually literally just double backstab, double Shadow Step,
the same
cold
play
blood.
just applies coming up with a much better board. Oh, WeiFu's hand is still just dismal.
Yeah, looking at what he can try and do, he can backstab and kill off the Acolyte to reduce the cost on his creepers, which means he can play one for 6 mana instead of the slightly cheaper 3 mana one, which maybe he could fit into the same turn as a Bone Mare or a activation for a Vilespine Slayer later on. But then he's going for the line of play he could have gone for on turn 2 after the Acolyte has done a bunch of stuff just dealing damage to face anyway.
Yeah, the Acolyte's done...
Yeah.
Chipped away.
It's just doing damage. Why not? Yeah. Getting in 3 damage is probably not important, but WeiFu is going to be going with that line of play because otherwise the Acolyte eventually is going to draw a whole bunch of cards because either Pyro or Spirit Lash will come into play or the crazy ways you can abuse it with Northshire and Circle.
Thijs has just got everything here.
Yeah.
No, it's just about how he sees the way to close this out.
I mean, you say this. We did see from Jason Joe he had the perfect freeze hand that still somehow managed to lose. But these anti-rogue games are a bit more straightforward than anti-cube block games. There's only so much shenanigans that a rogue can throw down in these mid stages of the game, as Bone Mare on nothing basically will not get the job done at all. So it's going to have to be Swashbuckler.
These plays are going up in grade all the time.
I mean, what do you want from me, man?
Turn 7 patches.
Nothing that can be done here, yeah.
Like you do.
I mean, you can cold blood it and then your Corridor Creeper's 0. It's a little bit interesting, perhaps, but it's also
consider,
really...
hey, I was really lucky I didn't do my patches for 7 turns.
Yeah.
Well, that'd probably be something he could do, which he hasn't had for 7 turns.
I guess so. It's like finding 20 quid in your back pocket after you put them in the wash, but there's also acid in there.
Well, what you do with your spare time's up to you. So, Thijs... Just looking at the straightforward win.
Yeah, that
making
definitely
sure
looks...
it doesn't have an accident.
I think you're definitely right. He can clear up just by trading in here, play Priest of the Feast, maybe even just with a Spirit Lash as well, actually, because if he can deny any chance of Bone Mare coming down... actually, even then, he's got Shadow Reaper to follow up, so he doesn't even need to get rid of the Bone Mare potential. It's almost a good for him if WeiFu plays the Bone Mare, because he's in no danger of dying. The Shadow Reaper can still kill him off. It's just nothing could possibly go wrong.
Yeah, just going to be greedy, which is good because we have seen you need those resources to finish the game off.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're going to play Priest of the Feast, you want it on an empty board, so all this is fine. just so you can get some benefit from its effect.
Yeah, I think I can actually agree with this play, because while I said Bone Mare is actually kind of good, it allows WeiFu to buff up the 1/1, trade into the Priest of the Feast, and then dagger it down. So while Thijs isn't afraid of his health total, he does kind of want to protect his minions here. So this feels like a decent use of the Spirit Lash at this point in the game, because it's probably not going to be getting much value for the remainder of the game.
WeiFu desperately trying to set up some sort of Bone Mare play. And it's a good time to do it before the Anduin turn. So obviously it's good to do it 2 turns before Anduin, but you can also wait till Anduin's been played and then try and do it. But the chip damage is going to be relevant as well. It means that Thijs isn't going to need a full combo to win this one.
Yeah,
as is the way against Rogue. You just shoot down their minions and win how you want.
So here, going for the Dragonfire Potion, I don't even necessarily know if I agree with this. I suppose if you can bait out a Bone Mare, then Anduin wins you like 100% of the time.
Yeah, and you know that Bone Mare's got a good chance of being there from what you discussed
very,
earlier.
Very
that
good
hand
chance
was
of
very
being
heavy. Some of those cards are still lurking about. They're either really bad, in which case you're in no hurry, or they're Bone Mare, in which case you might as well wait.
To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if Thijs could name 2 out of the 3 cards left in hand for WeiFu correctly very easily.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if he couldn't.
Even Kazakus is really, really good here.
Yeah, I think you could probably close your eyes, as long as you're allowed valid targets, and play any of these cards in any order you want, and you'd be fine for about 3 turns.
Oh, go full Noggin Fogger on this game.
Right. Because now he's just going to use his resources to clean up the board.
Yeah.
Which isn't where you normally go with Priest against most decks, but against Rogue, they just run out of things to do. Master Spell held back, just in case anything ever happens. There's not even patches into Bone Mare anymore. I guess there's deck hand into Bone Mare.
Yeah, there's nothing to be done here left for WeiFu up against Thijs. But looking at the rest of Thijs' decks, it feels like he's taken the easiest matchup probably first of all. The Warlock has been banned from him, so that's a really nice anti-aggro strategy that is now out of the way. So it's going to be his Rogue or his Druid. And while the Rogue probably has the best matchup, it's not perfect, because the Spellbreaker probably isn't the tech card you'd like in this instance. Obviously, it can hit an Edwin or a Bone Mare target, but it's not perfect. And the Druid, as we've seen, is really going to struggle against these aggressive decks.
Yeah, it's just going to be how he sees it. I imagine he'll just go for his own Rogue and hope. Take the 50-50.
Pray. Yeah.
Not a single Sonya seen in this tournament.
That's true. I'm unsurprised by that, because even though you were saying Show, I believe, was playing it on stream a little while ago.
He was Sonya saying everybody's wrong, Sonya's really good.
Even then, that was after deck lists were submitted, and the opinion before that, and probably still the prevailing opinion, is that it's just not good enough in Tempo Rogue.
Yeah, and it's really weird in the mirror. If you get behind in the mirror, it just doesn't help you come back, and that's what it does against a lot of decks, in fairness. It's just a 3-mana 2/2 that...
Thijs even drawing into lethal somehow for 1 mana with the Kazakus Potion. Very nicely done to close out this game.
Over. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just waiting for the next game to start. So 2 games to 1, and Thijs is still hanging in there. But like we say, even if he gets through the Rogue mirror, then he's got to get through that Druid game as well.
Yeah. So he's definitely not in a favourable position. It's not quite as bad as in Last Hero Standing tournaments when you're down 2-0, because you're not left with only your worst counter deck left. You've got a very good chance of having decent matchups left, but Thijs is left with even matchups or worse to carry on here.
Even matchups or worse. And the Tempo Rogue match is very swingy. If you get that, the hand that we just saw there, if you get that in the mirror, you're in so much trouble. Your opponent just keeps you off the board, makes their board wide, and then it would be GG, basically.
It's true. But at the same time, I think that the skill, outside of Keleseth nonsense, skill really can shine through in terms of mulligan strategy in this lineup, because there's a lot of things you just have to know. Like, for example, keeping Volspine Slayer off the coin is something I wouldn't even consider. And yet I'm just told it's right in this matchup, because it's such a powerful card here. And especially, I mean, you'd consider it off the coin, but even then, when I was first playing this deck, I probably wouldn't even do that. So there's a lot of decisions that make a big matchup, because the cards you think are most impactful in this matchup often aren't those ones.
There's a lot of timing issues as well about saving back your activators.
Right.
Not just for Vilespine Slayer, but for everything. Yeah. Buffs on your Edwin, etc. So the most you can try and flatten your opponent just by snowballing, which is obviously where you want to be. But you can also sort of go half-half and make sure that you've got comeback mechanisms using Edwins and Slayers and stuff. But then also, you don't want to make a giant Edwin because he gets killed. There are a lot of bits and pieces that go into this one.
Exactly.
But the overriding thing is you need the board to make most of those pieces work.
It's true. And it's all those things are 10 times more important in matchups like this where it's not over on turn 2, because Keleseth's Shadow Step here for WeiFu would probably have just locked out the game in his favour. There wasn't really much Thijs could have done against that. But now with both players getting respectable starting hands, nothing too absurd but nothing too devastating either, it's going to be all the perfect aggressive tempo plays. They're going to be winning it for either player.
But just looking there as well, the Ferryman being played just as a 2-3.
Yeah, sure.
Already. That's just a decision that has already been made that could easily have been dagger.
Yeah.
So already the...
And there would have been benefits for both.
Right.
You know,
that's what I mean. There's already decisions being made that are going to impact this game.
You don't want to give your opponent a good backstab target. You don't want to give your opponent a good SI target. Things like that are really interesting as to whether it's worth playing the Ferryman here. Even though bouncing something back to the hand would probably be too slow, it's worth playing for tempo more heavily in this matchup. It was worth considering from Thijs holding it back.
He's going to take care of a good bunch of stuff here.
Yeah.
Board cleared once again. We'll say that several times in the next few turns, I'm sure.
And as we enter the mid stages of the game with an even board once again, I'm not even necessarily sure who's ahead here, because in this mirror, you know, going first is usually considered... Well, in tempo mirrors, it's usually considered better, but in this particular one, maybe not even necessarily, because the coin is so good with Valspine, Elven Minstrel, even with Bone Mare to get it out a turn early, you can really make that huge tempo swing you need to lock out the game in your favour.
Yeah, we're seeing the crucial bits and pieces appearing. This first bit is like circling each other, but now we're going to start getting the Corridor Creepers, the Bone Mares. The setups into those cards are going to be absolutely crucial for who comes through in this.
Yeah. And now for WeiFu, had the ability to go coin into Valspine, but I love getting the Elven Minstrel down now. And on turn 5, there's not really too much that Thijs wants to play into this to deal with this effectively, unless he's got a backstab. But even then, he kind of needs Cobalt Scalebane to really effectively fill out the mana on top of that. He does obviously have the Corridor Creeper, which could come down, but just a 5-mana 5/5 is not that impressive.
Damage is also becoming irrelevant. WeiFu won't be able to use his weapon for much longer now. It's almost become obsolete.
Very good point.
18. You can expect 13 as a number you definitely can die from with Leroy Shadow Steps. So he's not going to be happy for much longer now. Thijs will be looking for a way to make this double Corridor Creeper do its thing.
Yeah, he's looking at Backstab versus Deckhand, because both allow him to play the Corridor Creeper at 4 or 5 mana respectively. There's positives and negatives for both. Backstab is a cheaper activator for Valspine, but Deckhand can get a charging Bone Mare on it, which I think is probably his thinking here, because, you know, even though it's 0 mana versus 1 mana, he can still go Deckhand Slayer on the following turn, and a 2/1 charger, if it can attack in multiple times, is way more valuable than a Backstab.
WeiFu's got a lot of things to consider here. He can get a massive Edwin down, but it doesn't really do much. He can do the Keleseth Trickery, but is it too late for that? The game's probably only going to last 4 more turns, so it might be too late for that.
I think it's worth considering going for Keleseth on turn 5, because usually past turn 3 or 4, you never really consider going Keleseth with Shadow Step because you're too far into the game, especially in the Rogue Mirrors. But when you can make a giant Edwin at the same time, an 8/8, I believe, it's worth considering more heavily. But at the same time, you really, really want to be killing off this Corridor Creeper with your Valspine.
Which you have no activator for apart from a wasted coin.
Yeah. And so maybe because of that, we just see Leroy coming down, kill off the Creeper, take out one of the 1/1s. It means that there is a 1/1 left on board for his opponent. But at the same time, it's not going into turn 7, so the Bone Mare can't activate quite yet.
See what he goes with. Okay. So it's a shame for the coin, but his next turn should be good. Coin or otherwise. So probably not a disaster that he had to do it that way.
He's just put himself in such a bad position in the Bone Mare versus Bone Mare meta, where because he could have saved the coin and gone for maybe a Bone Mare on turn 6 if something had survived, but
there was no way of clearing and setting it up. So
that's a good point.
You can win the Bone Mare versus Bone Mare meta by getting rid of all your opponent's things. He's unlucky there's a second Corridor Creeper. You can expect Thijs to be out of mid-range minions, just about.
Do you think we should have seen the Shadow Step to take back the Valspine, though, on the same turn? Because the 3/4 is nice if there is no Valspine in response. But with this line of play from Thijs, it means he's going to be getting the Bone Mare to hit first. He's going to be way ahead in the damage race. There's just not really much that WeiFu can do here.
Well, he can Keleseth, SI the 3-4, then Shadow Step it and kill it and clear everything going into turn 7.
I think that's actually the
his
play.
Own minion. It sounds awful, but it works.
I think that's definitely the play. That pickup of SI is actually arguably the best pick he could have got outside of maybe, I don't know, Valspine, but there wouldn't actually be an activator for Valspine, so that's a really nice draw. And I think he has to go for the clear route here. Setting up for Bone Mare is fantastic. Yes, you're using a whole bunch of your activators for combo, but if Bone Mare comes down here, which it looks like there's a very good chance it will, because there's been a card that's been around for ages, you just lose when Bone Mare hits the board.
Yeah, especially when you're on 16. There's not even like time
not
to
a
fight
chance.
back.
Truth is found in death.
Yeah, really nice spot there from you and WeiFu.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We're here all week. So he is going to get 2 minions on the board as well going into his own turn 7.
Yeah, that's just the other main benefit of the play.
Yeah, the Keleseth itself is just a 2-2 at this point. I mean, yeah, there'll be a tiny benefit from the stuff he draws being buffed, but actually as the game goes on quite long, maybe that will help. Thijs doesn't have much going for him here. Maybe a Swashbuckler and see what you get. There's a lot of good stuff you can pick up from Rogue.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, because you're playing half of it yourself. It's kind of the point.
Yeah, it's true. Maybe if he gets Swashbuckler into counterfeit coin, he can go for a Bone Mare on the same turn, which is kind of interesting.
Sick.
Valspine. Edwin Van Cleef is intriguing, but there's not quite enough mana to perfectly fit everything in with the Creeper Prince and Van
I'm
Cleef.
sorry. Would you like a 2-mana Edwin with your really good Swashbuckler?
Ideally, yeah, actually, I would, mate.
So greedy.
But even so, this is a very decent play for Thijs. Making an 8-8, or sorry, a 6-6 here is still pretty good. But at the same time, Bone Mare here is really, really good for WeiFu. And getting the first one, probably having a target for the second one, means I think he's actually just pulling ahead in this game.
I sometimes wonder if Fan of Knives ever just comes back into Rogue. The number of times it could do with 1 damage to everything. It's so slow and awful, though.
Mate,
it's miracle
I
time.
could not agree with you more. It is slow and awful when you're not playing preps.
So, good value trades available is what I'm trying to say there.
Yes.
And getting the board with good value trades here really plays into a very prosperous future.
Yeah, I'm looking at WeiFu maybe considering Leroy, because you can just take out the Edwin so effectively with that and then go for Dagger, take some really nice value trades, as you were saying. But this is just better in basically every way, I think. You can take out the vast majority of what's going on here. And even going for the trade into the Keleseth rather than the value trade is perfect, because it means that the Bone Mare then can't take out the opposing Bone Mare when you put it onto the Swashbuckler here as well.
So Thijs forcing through bits of damage because he's out of resources. This is the only chance he's going to get.
So that's a 2-2 Swashbuckler.
Is he playing any silency stuff? I've got this here, actually, I'll find.
For
one
Thijs.
Spellbreaker.
Yes, he's playing the one Spellbreaker because he's not banning.
And he's got 1
Warlock.
Vilespine left.
Okay.
I think.
And so maybe because of that, WeiFu ends up putting the buff on the Swashbuckler, because it will take a dagger in addition to a 5-attack swing. But even having said that, maybe just having the extra buff on the 6-6 is slightly more impactful. But then it dies perfectly to a 5-5. No, I think you have to put it on the Swashbuckler here.
It won't be that long before WeiFu has lethal, just because his board's going to be so big. When the end comes, it's going to come pretty fast. Like maybe 2 turns from now.
Basically, I think any play WeiFu can go for here, though, it's Leroy for lethal for Thijs. He just has that possibility for the next couple turns because of that Corridor Creeper Tempo swing. It's insane to see it come down to this instance, which could possibly bring this series up to a 2-2 scoreline.
Spellbreaker or Leroy, 2 outs.
It's not going to do it quite yet.
No.
And now with attack, he can clear off everything other than the 6-1 Bone Mare, and then all of a sudden he's actually not threatening Leroy lethal anymore, because WeiFu has the ability for clears with things like maybe even just Leroy for a trade into a minion. Oh, unless the faceplate comes in.
Unless he does this to keep the Leroy lethal available. The Leroy dream.
So WeiFu can go for lethal with a draw of his own Vilespine here, because he can go backstab into Elephant Minstrel, try and draw the Vilespine to just clear out the game.
Good.
Oh no, not in combination with the Leroy. He can get lethal on one of the following turns.
So many.
You're saying that you can't play 14 mana of cards in one turn?
Not quite, unfortunately.
Chat will never believe you.
Unless you Druid. Then you can play 17 in one turn.
Yeah, that's usually turn 1. Turn 2.
But
UI.
Because WeiFu will know how to count past the number 9.
You know how to cast? Sounds like we could do with him.
Thanks, mate.
It's alright. Anytime. Well, he's dead on board if he doesn't kill things.
I guess maybe instead of looking for the potential for Vilespine, he should be looking for the potential for Chain Gang to maybe put Taunt in the way, but maybe he just needs to play in the world where Leroy isn't the next card, because he just doesn't really win those games anyway.
Will he have time to dump this corridor creep onto the board? Will he have the mana? I'm not quite sure.
Not quite.
Is that 1?
Yeah.
Any buff? So 1 Bone Mail, I think. There it is.
Oh, the Bone Mare comes down for lethal. Thijs brings this back up to 2 games apiece. Somehow, he has managed to end himself up in a matchup that I thought was severely unfavoured for him, in a position where all of a sudden he just needs to win 1 more game to be advancing to tomorrow. But however, this is the one game I think he was most unfavoured with right from the get-go. He has saved the worst for last.
Yeah, this Druid matchup is so grim against Rogue. It's not where you want to be at the end there. So he's still got it to do. He's done the medium lifting, but now he's got to go into the heavyweight division and see what he can do.
It's true. However, for the longest time, it's been a nice, easy cop-out in cast to say Druid can just do Druid things, because that's never really changed. They can still just go for all the ramp in the world into things like Spreading Plague and Ultimate Infestation now, as opposed to the Druid combo that we saw in the olden days. But for WeiFu, bit of an interesting hand to start dissecting in the first few turns. Obviously, Keleseth is the premium card to find right at the start, but patches as well means the actual amount of buff that you're getting from that Keleseth is quite severely limited.
He has got the perfect hand to go at it, though, with the Rogue. So the Spreading Plague is going to slow things down later on.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, let's see how WeiFu decides to proceed here.
Going with the patches to start things off, all of a sudden, the starting hand is looking significantly less powerful for WeiFu, and to be honest, I wouldn't actually expect the patches to come down here right away. With the amount of buff synergy you have with Captain, I was expecting it to come a little bit later. But the thing is, if you're throwing it down around turns 3 or 4, you're much more vulnerable to Spreading Plague all of a sudden making many more Scarabs, which all of a sudden, you know, you're just not pushing enough damage to break through.
So, what can Thijs even begin to do here? Nothing for a while, right?
Yeah, he's going to have to find something like a Jade Blossom, Wild Growth, Maya Keeper to start getting himself up to those higher mana totals. But we saw in, I believe, the first game of this series, when he found 1 Jade Blossom, it made all the difference in the world and led him to a very near victory against the Kazakus Priest, but couldn't quite get there in the end. However, in this particular matchup, if he is able to ramp up to a UI, those games are difficult to lose.
So many options.
Cold Blood deckhand, when do you use it? Do you save it as long as you dare to make sure that Spreading Plague isn't a thing? Or do you just get it on with it on turn maybe 4 after you dagger at this turn, for instance, and just try and get 2 hits in with it?
It's worth considering, because Southsea deckhand Cold Blood isn't actually that weak to Plague, because you're making something that a Plague Scarab dies to anyway. He's definitely looking to draw something a bit meatier, though. Like, these options are not too fantastic yet, but he's very much considering just going for a Cold Blood right now, I think. Because if he goes for Swashbuckler deckhand Cold Blood on the Keleseth, and just something like a Jade Blossom comes down, that's a lot of damage he's pushing forward.
That turn was made really tricky by all that pirate synergy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, which order do you want to get your pirates down in with the captain available?
Yeah.
Playing the captain first is usually the weird way, but it made a lot of sense the way his mana was working out going into this turn.
Yeah, because even if a Wrath does come down, you know, it's off mana, so it's floating mana for Thijs, which is great for WeiFu, because he just needs to be making sure he's making his opponent play a bit awkwardly as...
That's got to be useful somehow.
I'm sure it is. If we look at WeiFu's deck list, he's got, well, even just rogues in general, some decent things to pull out here for 4 mana, but he's also got some pretty bad ones, actually. Elven Minstrel, Edwin Van Cleef, None of these are ones that you really want to be pulling from the
Right.
deck.
So it's actually not as good as it first looks.
Yeah, the best outcome, I guess, is like SI7 agent or another captain is the really best choice.
Yeah, the other captain would be okay, especially with this lineup, I guess. But Thijs is going to need 2 minions. The Sleepy Dragon isn't going to cut it because of the Vile Spine. And this damage is coming in very rapidly now.
It is indeed. And Thijs making what he believes is a play that's necessary, even though he's so clearly telegraphing that he wants to go for Spreading Plague. He still thinks it's worth leaving up this 1-1 for the extra 1/5 Scarab later on down the line. But it looks at the moment like WeiFu may just have to play into it.
Yeah, he's going to have to trust his deck here as well. Play into the Spreading Plague for 1 and trust your deck that the Minstrel fetches you some more activators for your Vile Spine.
Do you not think you should have just gone for Tempo Vile Spine there? Fights back
No, I want to save it for my
quite a lot better against
some
the
big
Plague.
stuff, I think.
Okay. I think that's it's
interesting.
It's very much worth considering, though,
Yeah.
because a 4/5 fights back so much better if it is, in fact, buffed up by Kelesek, which I think it is. Then the Elven Minstrel can very possibly find you your second one to fight back against something like a Sleepy Dragon or a Primordial Drake.
Savanite Chain Gang. Going to make this go on quite a bit longer.
And it's still a respectable board, I suppose, against Spreading Plague, which is the main reason for his line of play, because he can still take out, 2 of the 3 Scarabs and leave the rest very, very likely to die on the following turn.
Which almost represents lethal. It doesn't represent
That's
lethal,
true.
but it's representing a heck of a lot of damage with deckhands, Vile Spine still in hand for if the game happens to go to turn 9.
And I
Now,
mean,
what you're saying was it might not have got to turn 9 had he actually just gone for the Vile Spine tempo.
yeah, we could have seen Vile Spine with the deckhand here to clear off the board completely with the charge and the battle cry from the Vile Spine, but then is making a significantly weaker board. I think what he really needs to be thinking about is the Primordial Drake, and with saving back the Vile Spine, he's significantly less weak to that particular outcome.
Yeah, he's playing around the second Vile Spine to some extent here as well with a bit of suicide.
Yeah, I think this is...
Ooh.
Okay, I would have preferred the attack in there because of Swipe and because of the because of the Primordial Drake as well. It means that one of your guys isn't dying to the Drake and the Scarab all of a sudden is dying to the Drake. But
yeah, plenty of reasons to trade that in.
Yeah.
Thijs sensing that if he can get through this next turn, then he's going to start to turn the tide.
He's got a good chance of doing so, most certainly. Dragon Hatcher, even just as playing it from your hand, is not that bad in this deck. You can hit Sleepy Dragon, although I believe the only one in his deck is already in his hand. Yeah, only one there, but Primordial Drake could be found. Even Deathwing Dragonlord isn't half awful.
I like the indignation that, he might have to play it from his hand.
Well, you don't
How
want
terrible
to.
you have to play a card properly in Druid.
Well, I mean, you have to play patches from your hand sometimes, and it's awful.
It is a 9-drop you're going to play on like turn 4.
That's fair. That's not bad at all.
It's
Even if it
probably
is a
turn
2/4.
6, but you know. Thijs using Earthen Scales to actually get the board rather than any sort of mega heal.
I think this is much more respectable.
Yeah, this is just going to save so much health in the long run.
Yeah, especially if a Bone Mare comes down on this turn, it's going to be preventing... the Bone Mare can't even come down, and that's the main benefit of this play, is that you just deny any target for Bone Mare, which, as you said, will save you so much more health.
Numbers aren't adding up particularly nicely here for WeiFu. So we know we did the math.
So many.
The summons looks grim.
Yeah, it doesn't look great.
But now he just needs a minion of some sort of mid-range, so any 3/3 style minion is actually not too bad now. They are buffed up as well.
Yeah, that's true, actually. They does summon the buffed up ones. I didn't consider that.
So, yeah, get a 4/4 SI7 is probably fine right now.
You see, the thing is, he wants to go for Deckhand Southsea. For Captain into Southsea. But the thing is, then he can't go for a charging Bone Mare target on the following turn. And he also wants to save Deckhand for the potential to kill off Sleepy Dragon with the Vile Spine on the following turn. So I do like saving back the Deckhand here, even though it would have been able to take a nice value trade onto the Scarab.
Yeah, Thijs has got to be careful here. There's a lot of things can go wrong for him. Basically, every card he can play this turn ends up badly for him in the short term. He just needs to play the one that actually wins him the game the turn after.
Okay.
This Vile Spine that's been saved back.
And Thijs is playing around that excellently. He probably assumes that Valspine is a Valspine at this point, and that's why he's not going all in on the one Sleepy Dragon, instead spacing out his taunts much more effectively. And they still fight back very nicely against this board from WeiFu.
Yeah, he's been very precise in terms of not dumping stuff, like not trying to combo, not trying to use his cards to his advantage, his cheating cards, whatever you want to call those things. Just making sure he hangs in there, because he knows that WeiFu is slowly running out of things.
It's true, but with this hand in particular,
Yeah.
he's actually kind of not run.
Right.
Because now the Ken and Lich King have all but left rogues. This is the top end of the rogue deck. This is as good as it gets. So Bone Mare here, even though you're using the deck hand not as a activator, does leave you vulnerable to Primordial Drake and Sleepy Dragon, I think is fine. Because you just need to be making sure you're presenting a scary enough that you bait out a Deathwing, and then you Valspine that Deathwing and just hope you win the game.
Yeah, just to say you are trusting your deck. Your deck has got like 2 Corridor Creepers, not much else.
Yeah, there's
that's
not
bad
great
anymore.
top deck potential at all here for WeiFu.
So he should get an activate next turn. So playing to his top deck, but there's probably 13 of them or something.
Ooh,
Spinning
okay.
playing number 2, but this time it is just a speed bump.
It kind of is, but Swipe does help to slow down what's coming down here for Thijs. And then on the following turn, if you can draw Drake, that cleans up a fair amount of what's going on. But yeah, you're right. It's really scary what's going on here. Maybe he does now just have to go for Sleepy Dragon and pray that it will keep him alive. Obviously in combination with Kun the Forgotten King.
Will it keep him alive? Can we see if it will or not? Well, the Valspine will just kill him, obviously.
Yeah. Well, assuming he gets a...
Yeah, assuming he doesn't draw a Corridor Creeper.
Wow.
Because it won't be cheaper.
Okay. I think I can respect this play of going for the Kun instead of the extra Scarab, because he's got so much stuff to do in hand that a 7/7 probably protects him better than a extra 1/5 Scarab would, because the taunt, there's enough taunt at the moment. He just needs stats to fight back now.
Valspine was not active.
He was not indeed, but it doesn't really matter actually when you have a Bone Mare available to hit this board, which becomes truly absurd in terms of the amounts of stats on board.
Yeah, I mean, the only question at all is which absurd card do I play
Right.
this turn? And the answer to that is usually the one that's most expensive.
I think it just
Just because you want to play 2 cards next turn.
it has to be Bone Mare here, because the punish to that is Deathwing, but that's not a punish because you go Scalebane Valspine and just win the game.
Yeah.
And so outside of that, there's not really much that Thijs can do. Ultimate Infestation does is presented here from WeiFu, because he can kill off one of the most powerful minions, attacking with Kun as well, and maybe that helps him survive an extra turn, but it's not perfect at all. And here, perfectly distributed by WeiFu so that the Kun can't even kill off the Bone Mare if an Ultimate Infestation is in...
Thijs needs something special.
Okay. Oh, he can now buff up the Kun. That is an insanely good draw, actually.
Yeah.
He can gain 8 health, kill off a Bone Mare, play the Sleepy Dragon, I suppose. He's then taking... how much damage? 13 damage on the following turn, but he will be up to 19 health.
Yeah.
Whew.
But the board's going to be absolutely massive for WeiFu.
That's true.
We're
That's
down
true.
to Deathwing territory by the look of it. Which could just swing it back the other way as well, because WeiFu will be just completely gassed.
Well, he'll just keep back the Valspine. Like, he's not going to play the... Oh, no, he has to play
He's
the
gonna have to
Valspine
play
to kill
to
off the Sleepy Dragon.
right?
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so now, with this pickup, maybe Thijs can find his out in the form of Deathwing on the next card.
Alright, so 14.
Is not.
Leroy was lethal, right, as well?
Very possibly. Yeah, I think it was.
Pretty sure it
Yeah,
was.
Yeah.
Didn't get it, so now Ty's looking at Deathwing to have a decent chance, actually, if he finds it.
Deathwing's it. I think the... Yeah, there's nothing that can be done by the Primordial Drake. Oakheart, I don't think, would get the job quite done, because there's no double Dragon Taunt it can pull out.
Jay Blossom's not doing it.
That's not it. I don't think there's anything left for Thijs. I think he's going to be going home from this tournament.
Taiwan are going to win their 3rd consecutive match. This half of the bracket is all going Taiwan's way. WeiFu's showing that he's not just a memer. This guy can